Okay, I think we can start, colleagues. Good afternoon, colleagues. Am I audible? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you so much. Colleagues, welcome to the season of our CMEs, as the lab. And we want to say that the last time we had such a session was last year, December. We're looking into microbiology test diagnostics part 2. And then since January till today, which is about 6 months, we didn't have any national lab virtual CMEs because we were trying to create some opportunities for every healthcare worker or in the lab, especially to navigate and find trainings, or certain trainings outside, this platform. So beginning from July till the end of September, we'll be having, I think, about 12, if I'm not mistaken, but I'll have to check my database, such session. And then we believe that with these training that we're offering through the CME program and physical training that we avail, through different programs and through the lab, will be enough maybe to deem you still competent to still practice and still accumulate the required number of points you need for your licensure. And this is the first one. So we have 3 consecutive ones, from the NTRL consecutively. We'll be diving into the first one today. It's titled The Diagnosis of TB. And next week, we'll be looking into the new XDR cartridge and the whole implementation of the project. And lastly, we look into next generation sequencing. Then we dive into some other interesting topics as well. So with that said, may I introduce the NTRL? They go through the Office of the Manager, Ziane, to take us on today's session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lamin. Can I just confirm again if the screen is showing?
Yes, it's showing, bro. You can go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Lamin, and everyone who has just joined. Like they've introduced me, I'm Diko Tunzin from the National TB Reference Laboratory. Our topic today will be laboratory diagnosis of tuberculosis. So due to other competing activities, the manager has delegated this duty to me today. So, okay.
You can go ahead, Diego, with your presentation.
Okay, sorry guys, sorry for the disturbance. So our outline for the presentation will be having the key definitions, TB epidemiology, the outline, going to outline the role of the lab in the diagnosis of TB, also demonstrating sample collection, labeling, storage, transportation according to the national SOP. So mainly the sputum, the stool, to demonstrate how to communicate TB results to the patients. Also articulate the principle behind the TB diagnostic tests and the TIT of each test. Also exploring other TB diagnostic tests, demonstrating the interpretation of TB laboratory results, which we have from GeneXpect, mere microscopy, culture, LPA, DST, which is first line and second line, and also understanding the importance of quality assurance in the laboratory testing.
We can hear you. We can hear you. No, it's yours. It's this one. Is that one?
Okay, sorry guys, we have some technical problems here. So, okay, like I've outlined the outline of our presentation. So we'll start by definitions. So we have the type of drug resistance. We also have a definition on how it's resistance to. So we'll start by the monoresistance. So this one is resistance for one first-line drug, which can be INH, can be rifampicin, pyrazinamide, can be ethambutol, can be streptomycin. We also have poly resistance. So this one is more than one first-line drug, excluding the combination of INH and RIF. Then we have multi-resistance drug. Then this one is resistant to at least INH and rifampicin. Then we have pre-extensively drug-resistant tuberculosis. This one is resistant to rifampicin and the NH plus a fluoroquinolone. Then we have the extensively drug resistance, which is the XDR. So for this one, there's the resistance in INH, rifampicin plus a fluoroquinolone, and any other group, a second-line drugs. So rifampicin resistance, so this one usually it's the one that you get from the GeneXpect. Sometimes you find that your GeneXpect is going to tell you that it's MTP, then RIF resistant or RIF susceptible. Okay, then epidemiology of TB in Eswatini, which is our next slide. So we know that our population in Eswatini is approximately 1.2 million. So there was a strategy, NTB strategy, which was targeted for 2020, whereby the target was to have 35% reductions of TB by 2020. And then the data that is available is for 2022, whereby there was a 58% reduction, which means the target was met. Then the TB incidence, the target was also to have a 20% reduction by 2020, and there was a 50% reduction by 2022 when the data was collected. So that is the background on how the TB incidence targets were. And then the estimations, you can see from the graph that the prevalence rate, we have the incidence rate, and the notification rate. So from 2013, you can see that there were 1,182 cases per 100,000 by 2013. So in a population of 100,000, there were 1,182 cases. And then there was a decline. As you can see that now, when they did the study in 2022, it was discovered that there are now 325 cases per 100,000. So that shows the efforts that are being done to reduce the TB incidence, as well as the case detection in Eswatini. So the RIF resistance TB detected, so these ones, they should then be enrolled into second-line drug treatment. So whenever there are RIF resistance which are detected, these ones, they should be enrolled. So you can see from the graph that we have, start from 2015, 2016, up to 2023. So in some cases, you find that, for example, in 2022, the data, when the data was collected, so you had, so it was 66, the one which is not the thick red, the other one which is light. So you can see the RR, it was 66. So it means there were 66 which were RIF resistant, and then the thick red, you can see that it's 84, still in year 2022. So those ones were enrolled. So you find that there's an imbalance in the numbers between those who were detected and those who have been enrolled. So sometimes you find that there is a gap in reporting. That's why we find the numbers not corresponding there. So case notification. So you can see that the graph there, we have the children in blue, and then we have the cases notified from the DR and the drug resistance and the drug susceptibility. So you can see that from there in 2018, so the case is there, 3,151. Then for children, it means from that population, we had 162 children. So that was 5% of the whole population. So in 2019, we had 2,900, and then we had 172. So that was 6%. So you can see the pattern. So it was 5%, 6%, 4%, and then now it's shooting. If you can look at 2023, so the cases, they are now increasing. So why did people fall ill with TB in 2023? So we have these other factors which contribute to TB, but mainly if you look at the numbers there, the numbers for falling ill with TB, you can see that we have high numbers for those who are HIV positive. So the co-infection of TB and HIV, which is still a problem in Eswatini, you can see it's over 2,000 of those people. And then with the list from smoking and diabetes. So you can see the high relationship between HIV and TB from the graph. So the optimal TB cascade in Eswatini. So this simply means the flow of TB testing in Eswatini. How does it happen? How does it go? So the first part, we do the screening. So the client here is being screened for TB symptoms, where they can ask the patient the symptoms for TB, if they cough, if they have night sweats, if they have a contact for TB, and then if they respond positive to those questions, they're screened on, so they'll continue with the sample collection. But if the screening is negative, it means the cascade will end because that person does not meet the criteria for continuing in the testing. So if the screening is positive, it means the sample will be collected. So the whole idea is to collect 2 sputum samples, which will be collected on site. And then after collecting the 2, why do you collect the 2? Because one will be done gene expect, and then from the gene expect, the results are going to determine what is going to happen in the next cascade. So the first sample is tested using the GeneXpect MTP RIF. Then from this GeneXpect, it's either positive or negative. So if the MTP is detected, it means the second sample has to be sent to NTRL for culture confirmation, LPA, and DST. But if the GeneXpect is like MTP is not detected, then it means that you have to perform the clinical evaluation just to see if this patient is matches the GeneXpect is negative, but the symptoms, are they persisting on TB? Then if so, you can send it a sample for culture again. So the treatment is being initiated. Then at the end of the treatment, the doctor is the one who's going to give the outcome on how the patient has been cleared or not. So the approach to diagnosis. So we know that the TB diagnosis begins from the health facilities where they do the GeneXpect before they can come for culture. So the detection of TB in health facilities should be an ongoing activity. So it shouldn't, the cascade, it shouldn't stop, because the moment we stop, it means there is a gap. Then the transmission is going to go on and go on. So this one, so the diagnosis of TB, going to start with identifying the person with presumptive TB through clinical symptoms and physical examination. Like we have stated that from the screening, you are going to ask as much question to determine if this patient is a presumptive TB case. Then the diagnosis of tuberculosis should include the assessment for drug resistance to ensure timely initiation on the most appropriate treatment regimen. So the network, tuberculosis diagnostic network. So we can see that the network has got 3 levels, with the peripheral, which is the community level. They do all the screening. They have the GeneXpect, some have the microscope. And then we have the case finding, which are the intermediate or the district level. We also have the central, whereby there's the inclusion of the culture, which is the NTRL. So there should be a relationship between all these levels in order to ensure that the cases are being detected for TB. So the moment we miss any of these levels, you'll find that we miss a lot of cases. So all the cases should be reported. So Eswatini, the distribution of the cases, you can see that our Eswatini has 4 regions. Yes, it's 4 regions. So we have Shiselo, Manzini, Lubombo. So you can see from the regions that we have facilities which have microscope and GeneXpect. Manzini, we have 15. Lubombo, we have 9. In total, we have 35. Then for culture, we have 1 in Woho, which is the NTRL. We have Shiselweni, then Hlangano TP lab. And then the others do not have. So in total, we have 2 culture labs in Eswatini. That was just the distribution according to our regions. So the role of the laboratory in TB diagnosis. So TB diagnosis has to be confirmed from the lab. So if there are some cases that we are suspecting from the peripheral labs, at the end, they should be confirmed. So a well-functioning laboratory is the first requirement for successful bacteriological confirmation and management of the TB. So reliable lab diagnosis and treatment follow-up testing, they are necessary to inform treatment decisions for load among infectious TB cases and to interrupt transmission. So the lab also has a major role in national TB surveillance efforts, because like I've stated that the lab has to confirm. So you can have all the positive screenings, suspicions, but the lab has to confirm if those are real TB cases. So pathologically confirmed cases of TB, they remain the primary focus for TB control. So we have the criteria for diagnostic test selection. So the initial diagnostic test for all persons with presumptive tuberculosis should include the expect MTB RIF. So the gene expert that we talked about, that if you suspect the TB from the screening that you have done, then from there you have to order for culture to confirm. So we have expect XTR assay, which is a follow-on for the ultra. So we know that the algorithm has been revised. So I know that it is still going to be shared. So whereby we have to start with the TP RIF and then proceed with the MTP XTR. Then the midget culture and TST. This one is for all expect MTP detected cases, irrespective of rifampicin resistance. Like I've stated, that the generic is going to tell you if is MTP detected, then with RIF resistance or susceptibility. Then for all those cases, regardless of the RIF result, once it is detected, so A, which is a genotypic test, this one is going to test all expect MTP detected RIF susceptible cases. Then we have the second line, probably this one is going to test all rifampicin resistant TB cases which are identified by the experts. In the next slide, to stress the importance of including the gene expert results. So you can see here that if you miss the gene expert results in the examination request, this needs to be done. So it's always important to include the gene expert results in the examination request. So this one is the criteria for diagnostic test selection. So it tells you at the time of diagnosis we have the expect MTB RIF ultra test and culture GST, and then we follow with we have the speech at the end of 5 months, and then speech and smear at the end of 6 months. Mr. Zamin?
Yes, yes, Mtigo, we're still here, but we lost your presentation.
Yeah, I can see. Let me try to sort it.
Okay. Okay, you can go ahead.
I guess now it's showing.
Yeah, yes, it's showing now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. So we on the treatment, which is clinically, then we have tried the expects. You have to specify the results of the gene expect, and then also you have to send a second sample for LPA and culture. And then there's also the targeted sequencing. There are those cases whereby you find that they default, so or the symptoms they still persist even after the treatment. So those cases need to be done sequencing, since there's the targeted sequencing now at the NTRL. So so these are the recommended monitoring schedule in the MTR and TB. So we have the investigation, we have the baseline and the follow-up. So the clinical evaluation and the weight. So you have the smear microscopy, with the culture and the DST. So if the smear or culture remain positive after the 3 months of the treatment, so the recommendation is to repeat the DST, including the second line DST. Then if there is a positive culture after initial conversion, the DST is to be repeated immediately. So the filling of the examination request in the specimen container. So the requirements from the NTRL for filling the examination request as well as the specimen container. So the health facility requesting the examination and the date of the request, they should be shown. The name, sex, age of the patient, the location. Some of the things we are familiar with the address of the patient, with the contact person and the telephone number, clinician name and contact details. So it's important to include the contact details of the clinician, because sometimes you find that the examination request has got some tests which are contradicting with what is required for a presumptive case or for a follow-up. So then the lab has to confirm. So if there's a number for the clinician, it will be easy to just confirm with the clinician. So if the sample type, which is the name, you can say the sputum, or if it's stool, you can say the stool. Then we have the date and time of sample collection. Then we have the date and time of sample receipt, type of TB treatment. If it's a follow-up, we have the test requested, clearly marked. They should be clearly marked as well. The patient category, presumptive TB, drug resistance, then reason for request, clinically relevant information. Sometimes the reason for request can be important because sometimes the genetics can be, can say MTP not detected, but you find that you have the X-ray, you have the other clinical symptoms that we have done to evaluate that the patient needs the culture. So if you include the reasons for request, it will make life easier for the NTRL to continue smoothly with the testing. So we move the filling of the request. You can see the example of the request form here. So we are familiar with the request form, just to emphasize some of the areas. So we have the ID, the surname there, the date of birth, the age, the sex, the cell number there, then the specimen. So we don't have sputum there. You can see we have blood, urine, stool, CSF swab. So then the other, that's where you have to specify that sputum. Then the brief history of the patient. You have to include the clinical information of the patient. Like I've said, that is going to make life easier to know that, okay, this one was maybe gene expect, the gene expect was MTP, not detected, but clinically this patient needs a culture. So still the example there. So you can see that presumptive TB. So if it's a follow-up, we're going to say treatment, it's a no, because this one is presumptive. But if it's a follow-up, it will be yes. So those are the tests that you order them. You mark, that's where you mark the sample on the right, the sputum, and the test with the spear microscope, line probe assay, TB culture. So this for a presumptive case. And the result, the previous expect result, you can see there that it's MTP, not detected, and RIF. You can see that the CR. So they were sending the patient because of the X-ray result. So we have still, this one is for diagnosis. Then we have I want to open for follow-up. So this one is follow-up. So you can see on TB treatment, yes, because it's a follow-up. Then we have the test that is requested. That's a smear microscopy. And then they'll do the smear microscopy. And then for NTRL, they are going to order for TB culture because we use TB culture for monitoring. Then the types of specimen, we have the sputum, We have the gastric aspirates and other body fluids. We have stool. We have the pus, which includes the wounds and the boils, lymph nodes, aspirates, synovial aspirates, other body fluids, which can be bone marrow, pericardial, spinal fluids. Then we have biopsies, which are the pieces of tissues. Then collection of the primary sample. So before you collect the sample, the patient needs to be prepared. So as much as there is no special preparation for the patient for sputum production, but prior to collection of the sputum, the patient must be advised to move to open space away from people, because that is where he or she is going to cough, and then advised to rinse his or her mouth thoroughly with water to non-TB, Mycobacterium, and then advise the patient to take 3 deep breaths, then cough from deep inside the chest as much as possible after the 3rd inhalation. So 3 deep breaths, then cough after the 3rd inhalation. So we are doing this to ensure that you get good quality specimen instead of the salivary specimen, which is not going to give us the good results. So if the patient had to collect an early morning sputum, so we have to confirm with them if they did collect the sputum as instructed. Sometimes you give them the containers to go with them at home, then they do the collection. So you have to give the instruction as clear as possible. So in terms of consent, so like the ISO 15189 2022 standard is talking more on this patient consent. So for this one, if the patient willingly submits the specimen, they will be considered that they've consented. But the consent, it should be informed consent. In other tests, the standard promotes the informed consent, whereby you have to tell the patient what you are going to do. If you are going to take blood, we have to explain everything to the patient so that they understand. If it's painful, we have to state that it's painful. So, but for this one, the concern is in fact, because if the patient willingly submit the specimen, we consider it as a consent. Then the patient identification. So prior to sample collection, we have to confirm the name, the surname of the patient, the sex, the age, and also verify personal ID number if possible. So there's a note that if the patient is unconscious, you have to use identification given during the admission. Sometimes you find that you cannot get the details directly from the patient. So there's a provision for that one. So labeling of the specimen. The specimen should be labeled with at least 2 unique identifiers that corresponds with the information on the request for examination. So there should be a correspondence in the labeling of the specimen container as well as the examination request. Then the patient full name, which is the name and the surname, and the TB register number. So the recommendation is to have 2 samples collected at all times. So the volume, the minimum is 2 mils. Then sample packaging, triple packaging, which is required for safe transport of infectious material. So that is the container. It should be wrapped in absorbent material. It can be a paper towel, or we call it tidy wipe, protected by secondary packaging, which is a Ziploc bag, and then placed in a shock-resistant outer packaging. So we have the cooler bags, which should have the ice packs to ensure that the storage condition remain at 2 to 8 degrees Celsius, and then they should reach the lab within 3 to 5 days for TB culture testing. So this is an illustration of the triple packaging. So we have the specimen container there. It has been wrapped by the tidy wipe, and then there's a Ziploc, which acts as secondary package, and then you have the tertiary there, or the cooler bag there. So that's why you have the triple packaging. Then the acceptance criteria, according to 7.2.62 of the ISO 15189/2022 standard. So it states that the lab must have a process that considers the best interest of the patient in receiving care when a sample has been compromised to the following. So as much as the following points: incorrect patient or sample identification, sample instability due to maybe there's a delay in transport, incorrect storage or handling temperature, inappropriate containers, insufficient sample volume, as much as any of this can be compromised, but the new requirement of the standard has a provision to consider the best interest of the patient and continue processing the sputum. But while continue processing the sputum test, you have to, as a lab, you have to then take note of any of the compromise that may have been happened, like the one I've stated there, so that in case there are any compromise in the results, you can easily track to see that there was a problem initially. So when a compromised, clinically critical or irreplaceable sample is accepted, after consideration of the risk to the patient safety, the final report shall indicate the nature of the problem. Like I've stated, that the final report should have the problem that the specimen was insufficient volume of the sputum, so that we can have a correlation between the results and the primary specimen. So the tests which are used in a certain, we have the genotypic tests, we have the phenotypic tests, we have the serological test. So the genotypic test, this one, we have the GeneXpect MTP RIF Ultra, and now we have the XTR, and then we have the line probe assay, which has the first line and the second line. Then there's the targeted next generation sequencing. So basically, these are molecular tests. Then the phenotypic test with the Mycobacterium growth indicator tube, which is the MICHIT, with the TB culture, and the phenotypic DST, which has first line and second line, with the smear microscopy. Then under serological test, with the TB, LF LAM, and then we have the MPT64. So the TB LAM, we know that is used for those HIV positive patients. Then the MPT64, it's a test which is used at the NTRL for confirming if it's Mycobacterium tuberculosis. So it's a rapid test. Then the GeneXpect Ultra, we know that the principle of this one is the qualitative PCR-based method for simultaneous detection of MTP complex and the RIF resistance. So it gives you two results: the MTP complex result as well as the RIF resistance. So it acts by amplifying the MTP complex specific DNA sequences in the 81 base pair of the RPO's rifampicin resistant determining region. So it amplifies the regions for the RPOP. So it tells you if it has detected the resistance or not for the rifampicin drug. So the workflow, so there are 3 easy steps. The first one, you add the sample reagent to sample tube and then incubate for 15 minutes at room temperature. Then after that, you have to pipette 2 ml into the cartridge and then you insert. So it is as easy as that. So the results that you get from the XPECT Ultra, they can be either MTP detected, that means there is TB. It can be RIF resistance not detected, like it says, the RIF is not detected. RIF resistance detected, RIF resistance is indeterminate, MTP not detected. So we have these results from the MTP. from the expect ultra. So next slide is the TB culture. So the TB culture, the instrument that we use is the Mycobacterium growth indicator tube 960, which is the MGIT 960. So the principle of this instrument, so it contains an oxygen quench fluorochrome, which is tris-4, 7-diphenyl 1, 10 phenolphthalein, yttrium chloride, which is pentahydrate, which is embedded in the silicone at the bottom of the tube. So there is a tube which has got the fluorochrome. Then during the bacterial growth, as the bacteria is growing within the tube, there's a tube. So the free oxygen is utilized. So the bacteria is going to utilize the oxygen, which is in the tube, and then it is replaced with carbon dioxide. So with depletion of free oxygen, the fluorochrome is no longer inhibited. So this is going to result in a fluorescence. So the instrument there, so there is a screen there which is going to show if there's a fluorescence. So it's going to indicate that there is a fluorescence. So that's where you'll see the growth of the TB in the tube. So the intensity of the fluorescence is directly proportional to the extent of the oxygen depletion. So the more the TB consumes the oxygen, so it means the fluorescence is going to increase. So that's why it says it is directly proportional. So I don't know if it's clear there, but you can see the drawers, the blue ones, the blue color there, the drawers. So there's drawer 1, drawer 2, drawer 3. So that's where you open and load these midget tubes to detect the growth of the TB in the culture. So that's the instrument that we use for culture. So culture, the TAT is 0 to 42 days. So culture results are reported with date of result entry and organism isolated in either positive for Mycobacterium tuberculosis complex or negative for Mycobacterium tuberculosis complex. And sometimes it can be contaminated. So we can have a result of contaminated specimen. So in this case, we find that there was a growth, but it was not the Mycobacterium tuberculosis growth, so other organisms. So it can be non-tuberculous Mycobacterium or the NTM. So this one, it's a TB, but it's not the Mycobacterium tuberculosis. So it is also going to grow in the midget 960. So comments will be made when need arise for clarity. So sometimes in the report, it can show that the specimen was contaminated. Please submit a fresh specimen. So the results are being communicated, all of them. So guidance for requesting DST tests, drug susceptibility first line testing, which is the phenotypic DST. So the midget 960 that I've just shown in the previous slide, so detects Mycobacterium tuberculosis, and also it is used for phenotypic DST, first line and second line. So all newly diagnosed TB cases, susceptible TB cases, and MDR cases by GeneXpert Ultra in baseline, they are going to be tested using the phenotypic DST, using that midget 960. Then retreatments, which can be chronic, can be a relapse, it can be a failure to convert, and the defaulter patients suspected of resistant with first-line anti-TB drugs. They're also used on the drug susceptibility testing. Then the second line DST, this one is recommended for newly diagnosed presumptive TB cases who have shown resistance to rifampicin by GeneXpert or LPA. So then they go for second line DST. Then retreatments, it can be a chronic, a relapse, failure, and a defaulter patient, resistance to first line anti-TB and this one as well, they'll be tested using the second-line DST. And the newly diagnosed pre-XDR and XDR cases, just to confirm if the second-line drugs are going to work for these patients. So with the first-line LPA, so you can remember the previous slide that the line probe assay, which is a genotypic test. So this one is recommended for newly diagnosed presumptive TB cases, susceptible and MTR cases. So baseline LPA, and then you request the request by clinicians or is done by nurses. It can also be used for retreatment. So there are those cases whereby there's a chronic or there's a relapse, there's a failure to convert, and a default as well for those who are suspected to have resistance. So they are also encouraged to order the first line LPA, which is the first line light probe assay. Then the testing turnaround times. So sometimes there's a confusion as to I've submitted a sample to the NTRL, then the sample is still there, I don't get the result. So the turnaround times, they are very clear here with the smear microscopy, which is 5 days. It is used for internal monitoring. Then the results are sent to facilities once the culture results they are out. So we have the smear microscope, which is 5 days. Then we have the first line LPA. So this one, which is going to detect the RIF and the INH resistance. So 10 days for smear positive. So as you can see that you have the smear microscopy. So they start with the smear microscopy, and then the results for the smear microscope is going to determine the LPA. So for smear positive, so it is going to be 10 days. So it's important to know when to expect the results for this test. So we have the second line LPA, which is for detection of resistance to injectables and fluoroquinolones. So it's 10 days if gene expert results have been indicated on the examination request. Like I've stated that if you include the gene expert results in the examination request, it is going to shorten the turnaround time. So it's important to always include the gene expert result for the NTRL. So the culture, the liquid culture, which is the MGIT 960. So it is going to be 2 to 3 weeks for smear positive samples, and then 3 to 7 weeks for smear negative samples. So you have seen that I've stated that is 0 to 42 days. Sometimes the culture can go up to 42 days for a negative culture. So if it's negative, it is going to stay in the instrument up to the 42nd day. Then that's where you're going to get the results. So sometimes you can say, no, I've spent a month still waiting for the results, only to find out it is still negative. So it is going to show up at the end of the 42 days if it's culture negative. Then the first line DST is 4 to 6 weeks. Then the DST can only be performed on positive culture. So the first line DST cannot be performed if the culture results are not known. So the second line DST is 4 to 9 weeks. So if the gene expert results are indicated on request of examination, parallel with first line DST, 7 weeks, then it should be 7 weeks if the gene expert are not indicated. So now you can see the importance of indicating the gene expert results, which is shortening the turnaround time. Then the test, we also have the expect ultra for RIF. So this one, the turnaround time is 2.5 hours. So yeah, which is the analytical turnaround time. So like we have seen from the slide where I was showing the gene expert that is just a 3 simple step process. So it's around 2.5 hours. So the expect MTP XDR or INH fluoroquinolone ethionamide as well is 2.5 hours. So this one is used as a follow-on test for expect ultra. which is which has been implemented. Then we have the microscopy, which is the ZN fluorescence, which is 2 hours as well. So this one is used for follow-up, not for diagnosis. So quality assurance in the lab, I'm about to finish. So quality management system, QMS, is implemented at all levels to ensure good quality results. So quality assurance does not begin at the interior. It should begin at all the facilities where they do the genetic, where they do all the other tests, so that we do not compromise the results of the patient. So also complying to the ISO 151 standard, which has got all the quality essentials, including the documents, record safety, EQA, inventory, supplies, customer care, information management, equipment, etc. So complying to all these quality essentials is also another way of ensuring the quality assurance. Then the NTRL attained accreditation to ISO 15189 in 2019. So the accreditation status is continued even in 2024. So it is still valid. So the EQA also is a way of ensuring quality. So what is the importance of EQA? So it is to ensure the technical competence, the test accuracy, the reproducibility of the lab test. So for example, it can be gene expert, microscopy, culture, LPA. So the EQA plays this role. Then we have the internal quality controls, the IQCs. They monitor the test performance, the media quality, the reagent activity, and is performed with every batch of the sample. So that's why it's important to ensure that IQCs are being performed with each batch, and they are also monitored for performance to see if you are meeting the targets, and where not, to do investigative measures to detect the problem. So the quality monitoring also include the monitoring of critical practices of the lab. It can be adherence to SOPs, then instrument function, data entry, contamination rates. It can be quality indicators as well. It can be culture positivity rate, continuous effort to improve service, function, workflow, customer satisfaction. So there are these continuous quality monitoring programs, which will be there in the lab to ensure that quality is ensured in the lab. Then the checks alert system. So most of our automated real-time notification of TB test the results to clinician. So it supports remote monitoring and quality assurance of laboratory. Also enable the NTCP to do real-time data, so that the NCP guys can see what is happening from all the genetics. So it is important. That's why we've bolded that it is important to always check the aspect connectivity before running the test. So each and every day before you run, always check the connectivity of the aspect to ensure that you don't lose data from the gene expert. So, ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of the presentation. And our appreciation goes to MOH, EHLS, NTCP, NTRL, EMDC, the training coordinator, as well as the participants who have logged in today to listen to this presentation from NTRL. And I hope it was as informative as possible. I'd like to thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Wow, amazing. Thank you so much, Tiko, for this wonderful presentation, which lays a very good foundation for us all in terms of TB diagnosis, both clinical and especially on the laboratory side, and also understanding the tests that we have and the turnaround times to respond to our clients. So at this moment, we'd like to take some few questions and comments, in relation to your presentation. I would like maybe just to go straight to the charts. We have a couple of, two of them from Welile. Can I just read it and then maybe you can respond to each one? The first one states that is the screening of an HIV positive individual same to that of an HIV negative, given that HIV is the most prevalent co-infection with tuberculosis. And then the second one, same from Welile, it's looking into the number of days, 10 days minimum turnaround time. How is the loss to follow-up rate in terms of statistics from the NTRL? Maybe please respond to those, Mr. Mtiko. Then we can open for others.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dlamini. I'm trying to read again the question. Is the screening of an HIV positive individual same to that of an HIV positive? I think there's a repeat.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Apologies for arriving very late. Okay, so this is Magaliso Ziani. So we are trying to understand the question there. So if you mean by the screening, you mean for TB screening. So if you're talking about TB screening, so I hope my colleagues have happened to see the screening officers in the facilities, but they'll ask you some set of questions like the signs and symptoms. So when they're doing this screening, basically they will not ask you about your HIV status. They'll just look for the basic symptoms for HIV. I mean for TB, like are you coughing, are you sweating, and also like haste of conduct. So that's how the screening would go. So yes, we acknowledge that the co-infection for HIV and TB is actually very high in the country. So I do believe that once you are detected as positive, I hope maybe the clinics or the clinician will also consider your HIV status the night before initiation. But on the screening side, I think it's not part of the questions there. Then for the next question, which is about 10 days minimum of turnaround time.
Yeah, like how's the loss of flow?
So, up to TB.
Yeah. Okay, so this one says with approximate 10 days, which is minimum turnaround time. How's the okay? So the follow-up, there's a slide there that I've shown for the initiation and for those who have been detected. So we haven't gathered much data on the losses, like the exact figures to tell you that these are so many follow-ups that you have lost, but it's something that we still need to consider to know how many cases that we are losing. But the whole point is to have a system whereby all the cases that have been suspected and they've been also been sent to NTRL for testing. But it's something that we have to consider to look into. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Diko and Mr. Ziani for thank you for the responses. There's also another question from Julimbulelo asking for if intermediate patient, what would be the best advice, from such lab results, clinically, what would be the best advice? Could it be a follow-up test, or how best can the NTRL guide us, as lab practitioners to handle such results and guide like clinicians as well? Mr. Mtigo, you still there?
Okay, okay, thank you very much, Mr. Lamini. So for the rifampicin indeterminate, actually the NTCP is working on updating the algorithm that will come, which will be new. The NTCP is going to communicate today because there will be some changes in terms of the guidance there. So going forward, we might not need to repeat the samples, but you need to consider, I think it's the melting point of rifampicin on the assay, the ultra. So I think Mr. Lamine, we can wait for the guidance. It's something that we can address maybe in the next presentation, because we are going to discuss the new algorithm probably, and also the XDR assay. So can we maybe consider it in the next presentation? We'll start with it to address it,
Okay.
using the new guidelines or the new diagnostic algorithm.
Okay, I think that's fine. Okay, we also have another one from Penelope Vilagati, asking the smear microscopy turnaround time, that for an agent smear microscopy, is it still 5 days or less, or what's the turnaround time there?
Okay, Mr. Lamin. Okay, thank you very much once again. So in terms of the turnaround times, so I think the colleagues have observed that there are two sets of turnaround times there. There is that turnaround time for the tests which are done at the NTRL. So and also the turnaround times which are gene expected microscopy. So looking at the diagnostic network, when it comes to the NTRL, so the samples basically take longer to come to the lab. So you find that sometimes they will take you more than 5 days or so. So that's why maybe the turnaround time is longer for microscopy. But when it comes to the facilities, whereby the clinician will just collect the samples and send to the lab. So for that one, the turnaround time, we are recommending 2 hours for that one. So basically, at most, it shouldn't go beyond the 24 hours for the follow-up microscopy. That is the one which they will send, I think, at 2 months and also 5 months for DSTB. And for the RTP, I think they will do it every month. So once the facilities get the samples, it shouldn't take you more than 24 hours to get the results. So that is what we are recommending as the NTRA. Same applies with the gene expert results. So our recommendation is that for facilities which are only serving for labs which are serving their own facilities, we are saying for those labs, the analytical TAT, that includes consideration of delays. We are saying the results shouldn't exceed 2.5 hours. So that is the recommendation. Why? Because we're looking at the best interest of the patient, like the standard requires. So we are advising facilities or laboratories to consider the recommendations. So for microscopy follow-ups, let it not be more than a day. So 2 hours should be fine. And also gene expect. Because for these patients will find that they're already waiting at the facility. So they're just waiting for the results. So we're saying 2.5 hours for gene expect. You include XDR assay, it should go to around 4 hours or 5 hours. Microscopy, let it not pass 24 hours. That will be serving the patient. So that is our recommendation. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Ziane and Mr. Tigo. And above that, thank you so much, colleagues. Are there any other questions from in terms of raising hands that you have missed out maybe before the team? Any other questions or comments, colleagues, or contribution? I see Kukumkunu reacted or commented on the question from my leader that the screening remains the same for both HIV positive and negative for those or for TB. Maybe from my side, colleagues, I would like to appreciate NTRL for such a presentation and for kickstarting this session for our CMEs, for this season. We hope next week you can do the same, still deliver and dive deeper into all the assays, especially the XDR assay that we're interested to learn about. And then following the next week as well, introduce to us the idea of the targeted next generation sequencing in terms of TB diagnostics. So I'd like maybe just to say a couple of things from the training office. So colleagues, we want to appreciate, the time for you to to join, this network that we are trying to build, the culture of learning and building this CME platforms. So everything that we're trying to do here, we are reacting or maybe responding to the new standard, the ISO 15189. When you look deeper into clause 6.2, talking about continual medical education, and it states that each lab, could it be private or public, everywhere that we are trying to implement quality, we should have a platform where we constantly learn. And then this is like one big platform that we created last year for the National Laboratory Virtual CMEs. Although it does not cater for all the needs, we need per facility or per each lab. So the next approach is to create a facility-based CMEs. I might make an example that some hospitals have joint CMEs for both clinical and the lab. So our standard states that each lab should have its own CME, whereby you can meet for an hour every month and discuss a topic of your interest. So we want to regulate that as well, so that each gathering or each sitting where you discuss or train about something would give you CPD points as well, just like this platform. And we hope to have more of these, the national ones, whereby you can join, which accommodates everyone. And then the other one being facility-based, whereby each lab has dedicated time, maybe in line with your monthly meetings or any whatever that works for you. But we will be working hand in hand with the managers in all labs to implement that. And also, as you know, that after each session, we do want to keep records of people who participated and then acknowledge that and update our database in terms of the EHLS training database, the laboratory national lab database, as well as the EMDC database. So we usually put a quiz, which is like just 10 questions about what you've been learning about the topic per day. So I will pull up I'll just post the quiz today on the chat box, and then on the screen here, I'd like to share the QR code. You can scan it on your phone, colleagues, and then try to attempt just a small question there. And so as you can see, please try to also look into the chat box. I've posted just the quiz, which acts as our register to know everyone that has been participating in today's session. And we do record this session for those who cannot join due to other commitments, and then we upload the videos through the channel that we opened through the we created a YouTube page and we upload the videos there, and you still can find the description of that session that was delivered today. And then the description, under the description, you'll find the link to the quiz as well. So you can go back and learn all the videos all the CMEs we've had last year have been uploaded there. I think later I might share that as well. But for now, please take just a few minutes and do the small quiz, which is the one I've posted on the chat box. And yeah, thank you. It's just usually a few questions about the topic. So today I think there are about 10-15 asking about just gauging your knowledge on TB, and please try to complete this. And if you were both sharing a screen, make sure that everybody can share the link to each other, then we can keep the records of today's session. And from my side, I thank you all, colleagues. Please do join next week. And the other one, we'll still do invite everyone through your direct emails, through all pages that we have to spread our sessions. Thank you.